The air raid sirens tore through the Los Angeles night like a banshee's scream, yanking Private Eddie Callahan from a shallow sleep. He bolted upright on his cot, heart slamming against his ribs, as the shrill wail drowned out the snores of the 37th Coast Artillery Brigade's barracks. It was 2:25 a.m., February 25, 1942, and the world was unraveling. Eddie fumbled for his boots, the cold concrete biting his bare feet, when the first searchlight stabbed the sky outside. Its beam sliced through the blackout curtains, painting jagged shadows across the room. Then came the boom, a deep, guttural roar of anti-aircraft guns that shook the walls. "Move, Callahan." Sergeant Hank Bulldog, Russo's voice cut through the chaos, sharp as a bayonet. The old man loomed in the doorway, his World War I limp exaggerated by the urgency, his grizzled face lit by the flickering glow of a cigarette he'd never light in peacetime. "Get your ass to the gun now." Eddie stumbled out, helmet askew, joining the flood of soldiers spilling onto the hilltop battery overlooking the city. The air tasted of salt and smoke, the Pacific a dark smear beyond the sprawl of lights below, lights that shouldn't be on during a blackout. He reached the gun emplacement, a hulking 3-inch cannon, and froze. Searchlights converged in the sky, their beams locking onto something massive, oval, and shimmering, a shape that didn't belong. Shells screamed upward, bursting in fiery blooms around it, but the thing just hung there, silent and unyielding. Eddie's stomach twisted. This wasn't in the drills. "Load it, kid," Russo barked, shoving him toward the ammo crate. Eddie's hands shook as he hefted a shell, its weight grounding him for a split second before the next explosion rattled his teeth. What the hell was that thing? Not a Jap plane. Not with that shape, that stillness. Russo's eyes narrowed, tracking it, and for the first time, Eddie saw something flicker in the sergeant's steel gaze, fear. Rewind 12 hours, and Los Angeles was a city on edge. The war had sunk its claws in deep since Pearl Harbor, 3 months back, and the wound was still raw. Just yesterday, February 23rd, a Japanese submarine had lobbed shells into an oil field near Santa Barbara, 100 miles up the coast. The papers screamed invasion. Radios crackled with warnings of enemy planes lurking offshore. Blackout curtains smothered every window, and air raid drills had folks jumping at shadows. Eddie felt it too, a restless itch under his skin, the kind that came from being 19 and far from his Fresno farm, thrust into a war he barely understood. He'd enlisted to prove something, to his pa, to himself, but the 37th was a pressure cooker. Russo ran it like a tyrant, his limp a constant reminder of trenches Eddie couldn't imagine. The sergeant was all bark and bite, a relic of 1918 who'd seen Zeppelins fall but never flinched. "You don't shoot till I say, Callahan," he'd growl during drills, smacking Eddie's helmet. "And you don't miss." Eddie nodded, swallowed his nerves, and kept his head down. Then there was Clara Mendez, the odd one out. She wasn't military, just a civilian volunteer, 22, with dark eyes that saw too much. She manned the radar shack, a tin box perched on the hill, her fingers dancing over dials like a pianist. The brass didn't trust women with tech, but Clara had a gift, spotting blips no one else could. Eddie liked her quiet confidence, the way she'd smirk when Russo grumbled about dames in the war. That morning, she'd been twitchy, muttering about faint signals on her screen that flickered and vanished. "Something's out there," she'd said, half to herself, staring at the sea. Russo waved her off. "Ghosts, Mendez. Focus on the real enemy." But Eddie caught the unease in her voice. By dusk, the city settled into an uneasy hush. Eddie stood watch at the gun, the cannon's cold metal a comfort against the unknown. The sun bled red over the horizon, and he wondered if the Japs were really coming. If those subs off Santa Barbara were just the start. Russo paced nearby, barking at the crew to stay sharp. Clara lingered by her shack, headphones on, her silhouette framed against the fading light. The air hung heavy, thick with salt and tension, as if the night itself held its breath. It broke at 2:25 a.m. The sirens hit first, a wail that jolted Eddie from his cot and sent the barracks into a frenzy. He was halfway to the gun when Clara's voice crackled over the radio, sharp and urgent. "Unidentified object, 10 miles west, closing fast." Russo cursed, hobbling up the hill, his limp slowing him but not stopping him. "Balloons, my ass, get those lights up," he roared. The searchlights snapped on, their beams slashing the dark, and the crew piled into position. Eddie slid behind the gun, Russo at his shoulder as Clara's updates poured in. 5,000 feet. Holding steady. It's not moving right. The first shell went up, a tracer round that lit the sky orange. Eddie tracked it, breath hitching, until the lights caught the target. There it was, huge, maybe 100 feet across, an oval that gleamed faintly like oil on water. It hovered over the city, silent where planes should have roared, steady where balloons should have drifted. Russo's jaw tightened. "That ain't Jap," he muttered, almost to himself. "That ain't anything." Eddie slammed a shell into the breach, the clang of metal steadying his nerves. The crew around him shouted coordinates, their voices swallowed by the growing thunder of guns. Below, Los Angeles flickered. Some fool hadn't doused their lights, and the glow silhouetted the thing in the sky. It didn't flinch as shells burst around it, didn't fall when a hit flared against its edge. Eddie's pulse raced. He'd seen planes in newsreels, heard Russo's tales of Zeppelins, but this? This was wrong. "Fire, damn it!" Russo yelled, slamming a fist on the cannon. Eddie pulled the lanyard, and the gun kicked back, the shell screaming into the night. The sky erupted, a storm of light and sound, and the oval loomed larger, unshaken. Clara's voice cut through the static. "It's still there, direct hits, and it's still there." Eddie glanced at Russo, saw the old man's hands tremble for a split second before he gripped the radio. "Keep firing," Russo growled, eyes locked on the thing. "Whatever it is, we bring it down." The hill shook with the next volley, and Eddie braced himself, the night spiraling into chaos around that impossible shape. The sky above Los Angeles erupted into a furnace of light and thunder, the hilltop battery a frantic hive of steel and sweat. Private Eddie Callahan's world narrowed to the cannon's roar as he rammed another shell into the breach, the recoil slamming his shoulder like a mule's kick. The oval thing, huge, silent, and shimmering, hung in the night at 10,000 feet, a mocking specter against the barrage. Searchlights pinned it in a cage of white beams, their glow catching its edges, revealing a surface that gleamed like polished metal. Shells burst around it in fiery blossoms, yet it didn't budge, didn't fall. Eddie's breath hitched, his hands slick with sweat despite the February chill. "Faster, Callahan!" Sergeant Hank Russo bellowed, his voice hoarse over the din. The old man loomed beside the gun, his limp forgotten in the adrenaline, eyes blazing as he barked coordinates. 10 degrees left, elevation steady. Eddie obeyed, cranking the wheel, the cannon swiveling with a groan. Russo's cigarette dangled unlit from his lips, a relic of calm he'd never reclaimed tonight. "Hit it, damn it, hit it!" The next shell screamed skyward, a tracer round slicing the dark. Eddie tracked it, saw it detonate dead center against the object. A flare of orange lit its side, and for a heartbeat, he thought he saw it ripple, like a stone dropped in a pond. But it held unyielding, as if the 3-inch shell was a pebble against a mountain. "Direct hit," he yelled, voice cracking. Russo snarled. "Then why's it still there?" Clara Mendez's voice crackled through the radio, sharp and urgent from the radar shack 50 yards back. "It's not moving, holding at 10,000 dead still. No drift, no drop, impossible." Eddie pictured her there, hunched over dials, her dark eyes wide as the screen fed her lies no training could explain. Russo snatched the radio, shouting, "What's it doing, Mendez?" Her reply was static-laced. "Nothing, just sitting there." The hill trembled as more batteries opened up. 37mm guns down the slope, heavier 90mm cannons from Santa Monica. Over 1,400 shells would fly tonight, Eddie learned later, but in the moment, it was a storm without end. Tracers streaked red and gold, stitching the sky, while shrapnel rained back, pinging off the cannon's shield. A shard grazed Eddie's arm, drawing blood he didn't feel. He ducked, reloaded, fired again, the rhythm mechanical, his mind racing. What was this thing? No plane took this punishment, no balloon, no Zeppelin. Russo's World War I stories flashed through his head, burning airships crashing in flames. This wasn't that. "Pour it on," Russo roared, waving at the crew. Gunners flanked Eddie, Rodriguez on the left, swearing in Spanish, Jenkins on the right, pale as a ghost. The air thickened with cordite and smoke, a haze that stung Eddie's eyes. Below, Los Angeles flickered, blackout forgotten as panicked lights winked on. Civilians saw it too, Katie, a nurse on her porch 5 miles south, frozen as the big thing loomed over rooftops, shells bursting uselessly around it. Eddie didn't know her, but her fear echoed his own. The object shifted, a slow drift south toward Culver City, taunting them. Searchlights chased it, their beams bending oddly at its edges. Eddie squinted. Did it glow? A faint shimmer pulsed along its flank, faint as a dying ember. "It's moving," he shouted. Russo grabbed binoculars, cursed. "Too damn slow for a plane. Too damn high for a kite." He dropped the glasses, snatched a rifle from Jenkins, and fired a burst skyward, the crack of bullets lost in the cannon's thunder. Pointless, Eddie thought, but Russo's rage was a force of its own. Clara's voice cut in again. Radar's picking up more. 5 blips now, scattered west. Eddie's gut twisted. 5. He glanced at the sky, saw only the one, but the smoke and glare blurred everything. Russo spun on the radio. 5 what, Mendez? Static swallowed half her reply. Flickering, could be interference, but they're there. The radar was old finicky. Eddie knew that, but Clara's tone said she believed it. Russo slammed the radio down. 1 or 5, we kill it. The gun jammed. Eddie yanked the breech, metal screeching, as a shell casing spun free and clipped his jaw. He stumbled, tasting blood, while Rodriguez lunged to help. Keep it hot, Russo yelled, shoving Jenkins to the ammo crate. The cannon coughed back to life, spitting another round. Eddie watched it arc, saw it smash into the object's side. A perfect hit that flared bright, illuminating a smooth, curved hull. No wings, no tail, no markings. His stomach dropped. It's not even scratched, he muttered. Russo heard, snapped, shut up and shoot. Panic crept into the crew. Jenkins bolted, dropping a shell that rolled downhill, his voice shrill. It's invaders, God help us. Russo grabbed him by the collar, hauled him back, snarling. You run, you're dead before they are. Eddie reloaded, hands shaking worse now, the cannon's heat searing his palms. The object pulsed, a low, bone-deep hum that rolled through the ground, vibrating up his legs. He staggered, knees buckling, as the searchlights wavered, their beams twisting like water around a stone. What the hell? Rodriguez choked, clutching the gun for balance. It's doing something. Clara shouted over the radio, her calm fracturing. Signals spiking, off the charts. Eddie's ears rang, the hum drilling into his skull. Russo gripped the cannon, face ashen, his limp leg trembling. The object hung there, a silent giant, soaking up their fire like a sponge. Eddie fired again, the shell bursting so close he felt the heat, saw the flash paint its hull in stark relief. Metal, yes, but alive somehow, shifting under the impact. More ammo! Russo yelled, voice raw. Jenkins scrambled, tripped, and a crate tipped, shells clattering across the dirt. Eddie lunged to help, dragging one back as Rodriguez fed the gun. The barrage peaked, a deafening crescendo, every battery in range unloading at once. Shells rained up, shrapnel rained down, a cycle of fury that tore the night apart. Eddie's world was noise and motion, the oval a fixed point in the madness. He saw it take a dozen hits, maybe more, each one a fireball that should have shredded steel. Nothing. Clara's voice broke through, faint now. It's pulsing faster, moving south again. Eddie tracked it, saw it drift, deliberate and slow, mocking their efforts. Russo pounded the cannon, roaring, all guns, full barrage now. The order rippled down the line, and the hill erupted anew. Eddie loaded, fired, his arms screaming, his mind blank, but for the target. The sky blazed, a tapestry of light and death, and still the thing held, untouched, unshaken, a riddle wrapped in metal and shadow. A 90mm shell from Santa Monica scored the loudest hit yet, a thunderclap that shook the earth. Eddie shielded his eyes, saw the object glow brighter for a split second, its hum deepening. Then it tilted, barely a degree, but enough to send a chill through him. It's turning, he yelled. Russo spat. Good, give us a bigger shot. The crew redoubled, shells screaming in a final, desperate salvo. Eddie's last round streaked up, bursting against its flank, and he swore he saw it shimmer, like a laugh, silent and cold. The barrage stretched on, minutes bleeding into eternity, until the first gray of dawn crept over the horizon. The object faded into the haze, slipping south, leaving no trail, no wreckage. Eddie sank against the cannon, chest heaving, the hum still echoing in his bones. Russo stared at the empty sky, hands clenched, while Clara's radio went silent. The hill was a mess, shell casings, blood, broken men. And the thing was gone. What was it? Eddie rasped, barely audible. Russo didn't answer, just limped to the edge of the emplacement, his silhouette stark against the coming light. The battle was over, but the war, the real war, felt like it had just begun. The guns fell silent just before 4 a.m., leaving a ringing void in Private Eddie Callahan's ears. He slumped against the cannon, its barrel still warm from the night's fury, his hands raw and blood-streaked from hours of loading shells. The Hilltop Battery overlooking Los Angeles was a graveyard of spent casings and shattered nerves, the air thick with cordite and the tang of metal. Above, the sky lightened to a bruised gray, the first dawn since the thing, the oval, the nightmare, had faded into the haze. No wreckage, no debris, just an empty expanse where it had hung, mocking their fire. Eddie's chest heaved, his breath ragged. What had they fought? Sergeant Hank Russo stood at the emplacement's edge, staring south where the object had drifted. His limp was back, worse now, his right leg trembling under the weight of exhaustion. The unlit cigarette drooped from his lips, forgotten, as he muttered something Eddie couldn't catch. Something about Zeppelins, maybe, or the trenches of 1918. Russo's hands clenched into fists, knuckles white, but his eyes were hollow, stripped of the rage that had fueled him hours ago. "You see that, Callahan?" he rasped, voice like gravel. "You see it take it all and just sit there?" Eddie nodded, too drained to speak, the hum of the thing still vibrating in his bones. Clara Mendez burst from the radar shack, her dark hair tangled, her face pale as she clutched a crumpled log sheet. She stumbled toward them, boots crunching on shell fragments, her breath visible in the chill. "It's gone," she said, voice tight. "Radar lost it, 5 blips, then nothing. Vanished offshore, like it was never there." She thrust the paper at Russo, her fingers trembling. "I logged it all, direct hits, that pulse. It shouldn't have held. Nothing should have held." Russo took the sheet, glanced at it, then let it fall, his silence heavier than any order. Below, Los Angeles reeled. The barrage had left scars. Shrapnel-pocked rooftops, shattered windows glinted in the dawn. 5 civilians were dead, the radio would later report. 2 from heart attacks, 3 from blackout crashes, their cars crumpled in the panic. Eddie didn't know them, but he felt their weight. Civilians had seen it too, like Katie, the nurse, who'd stood on her porch miles away, whispering prayers as the big thing loomed. Or C. Scott Littleton, a lanky teen pedaling home from a friend's, who'd stopped cold, gaping at the oval framed by searchlights and bursting shells. The Los Angeles Times would run the photo tomorrow. Beams converging on that shape, a frozen moment of the impossible. Eddie hadn't seen it yet, but he'd live it forever. The crew around him fractured. Rodriguez sat on an ammo crate, head in his hands, muttering about saints and devils. Jenkins, the one who'd bolted mid-fight, paced near the gun, eyes darting, still half convinced it was invaders. Russo limped over, grabbed him by the shoulder. "Stow it, Jenkins. It's done." But Jenkins shook his head, voice shrill. "Done. That wasn't no plane, Sarge. Not Jap, not ours, not anything." Russo's grip tightened, then released, his face unreadable. Eddie watched, a knot in his gut. Jenkins wasn't wrong. Clara sank to her knees beside the cannon, staring at the sky. "It defied everything," she said, more to herself than them. "No drag, no damage. Physics doesn't bend like that." Eddie crouched next to her, wiping blood from his arm onto his sleeve. "What was it, Clara? Jap trick? Something else?" She met his gaze, her eyes sharp but lost. "I don't know. But it wasn't a balloon. Balloons don't hum." The memory of that pulse, the low, thrumming wave that had knocked him down, flashed through him, and he shivered. Boots crunched behind them. A dozen military police swarmed the hill, faces stern under their helmets, rifles slung but ready. An officer, Captain Tillman, square-jawed and cold, strode up, barking orders. "Secure the site. No one talks, no one leaves." 2 MPs grabbed Clara's log sheet from the dirt. Another confiscated a camera from a gunner who'd snapped a shaky shot. Tillman fixed Russo with a stare. "What happened here, Sergeant?" Russo straightened, jaw tight. "Unidentified object, sir. We engaged. It withdrew." Tillman's eyes narrowed. "Withdrew? No wreckage?" Russo shook his head, and Eddie saw the captain's lips thin, a crack in the official mask. The MPs herded the crew into a tight circle, their voices low but firm. "False alarm," Tillman announced, loud enough for all to hear. "War nerves, that's all. You saw a weather balloon, got jumpy. End of story." Eddie blinked, disbelief surging. "A balloon? Sir, we hit it, dozens of times." Tillman's gaze snapped to him, icy. "You hit nothing, Private. You're tired, you're green, you're wrong." Russo stepped forward, voice low. "With respect, Captain, that wasn't no balloon." "I've seen," Tillman cut him off. "You've seen what I say you've seen, Sergeant. That's an order." Clara shot to her feet, fists clenched. "I've got radar logs, 5 objects, steady altitude, moving against the wind." "You can't." An MP grabbed her arm, yanking her back. "Logs are classified, Miss Mendez. Hand them over." She glared, but another soldier pried the last crumpled sheet from her hand. Eddie's stomach sank as the MPs boxed up the radar gear, their movements swift, practiced. The truth was slipping away, buried under brass and boots. By noon, the hill was locked down. The crew sat under guard, forbidden to speak as Tillman briefed them again. "Weather balloon," he repeated, voice flat. "Lost from a base up the coast. War nerves did the rest. You say different, it's a court-martial." Eddie stared at the dirt, the photo from that gunner's camera flashing in his mind. He'd glimpsed it before it vanished. The oval, clear as day, unshaken by their fire. A balloon? He'd loaded enough shells to level a squadron, felt that hum in his teeth. Russo sat beside him, silent, his limp legs stretched out, a man deflated. Clara paced near the shack, her protests muted by the MP's glares. Rumors spread anyway. Jenkins whispered about aliens, Rodriguez about secret Jap weapons. Civilians like Littleton, biking home, would tell friends of an indestructible craft, tales the brass couldn't silence. Eddie overheard an MP mutter about tests, too quiet to catch fully, and his mind raced. Tests? Whose? The Army's? Something bigger? He glanced at Russo, saw the sergeant's jaw twitch, but the old man said nothing, just stared at the horizon where the thing had gone. The sun climbed higher, casting long shadows over the hill. Tillman dismissed them with a final warning. "Mouths shut or you're done." The MPs dispersed, taking the gear, the logs, the proof. Clara lingered, her eyes burning with defiance. "They can't erase it," she said to Eddie, voice low. "We know what we saw." He nodded, but the weight of Tillman's words pressed down. Russo limped off without a glance, his back bent, a soldier broken not by bullets but by questions. Eddie stayed by the cannon, tracing a dent where shrapnel had struck. The city below buzzed with life again, oblivious or afraid, while the sky mocked him with its calm. He'd fought something up there, something real, something alive, and now it was a ghost, a lie stitched shut by men in uniforms. The hum lingered in his memory, a thread he couldn't cut, pulling him toward a truth no one wanted named.